An obelisk is a tall, four-sided, narrow tapering monument which ends in a pyramid-like shape, a pyramidion at the top. These were originally called tekhenu by the builders, the ancient Egyptians. The Greeks who saw them used the Greek obeliskos to describe them, and this word passed into Latin and then English. Ancient obelisks are monolithic, that is, they consist of a single stone. Apart from its shape, this is an obelisk's major identifying characteristic, because it demonstrates that the people who raised them had the technological ingenuity required to shift and raise stones weighing hundreds of tons. Though this technological capacity exists today, most modern obelisks are made of several stones. Some, like the Washington Monument, are buildings. Technically, these are not real obelisks, but are obelisk-shaped monuments. The term stele is generally used for other monumental, upright, inscribed and sculpted stones. Ancient obelisks. Egyptian obelisks were prominent in the architecture of the ancient Egyptians, who placed them in pairs at the entrance of temples. The word obelisk, as used in English today, is of Greek rather than Egyptian origin because Herodotus, the Greek traveler, was one of the first classical writers to describe the objects. A number of ancient Egyptian obelisks are known to have survived, plus the unfinished obelisk found partly hewn from its quarry at Aswan. These obelisks are now dispersed around the world, and fewer than half of them remain in Egypt. The earliest temple obelisk still in its original position is the 68-foot, 120-ton red granite obelisk of Senusre I of the 12th dynasty at Al-Matariya in modern Heliopolis. The obelisk symbolized the sun god Ra, and during the brief religious reformation of Akhenaten was said to be a petrified ray of the Aten, the sun disk. It was also thought that the god existed within the structure. Benben was the mound that arose from the primordial waters new upon which the creator god Atum settled in the creation story of the Heliopolitan creation myth form of ancient Egyptian religion. The Benben stone is the top stone of the Egyptian pyramid. It is also related to the obelisk. It is hypothesized by New York University Egyptologist Patricia Blackwell Gary and astronomy senior editor Richard Talcott that the shapes of the ancient Egyptian pyramid and obelisk were derived from natural phenomena associated with the sun. The pyramid and obelisk might have been inspired by previously overlooked astronomical phenomena connected with sunrise and sunset, the zodiacal light and sun pillars respectively. The ancient Romans were strongly influenced by the obelisk form, to the extent that there are now more than twice as many obelisks standing in Rome as remain in Egypt. All fell after the Roman period except for the Vatican obelisk, and were re-erected in different locations. The largest standing and tallest Egyptian obelisk is the Lateran obelisk in the square at the west side of the Lateran Basilica in Rome at 105.6 feet tall and a weight of 455 tons. Not all the Egyptian obelisks in the Roman Empire were set up at Rome. Herod the Great imitated his Roman patrons and set up a red granite Egyptian obelisk in the hippodrome of his new city Caesarea in northern Judea. This one is about 40 feet tall and weighs about 100 tons. It was discovered by archaeologists and has been re-erected at its former site. In Constantinople, the Eastern Emperor Theodosius shipped an obelisk in AD 390 and had it set up in his hippodrome, where it has weathered crusaders and Seljuks and stands in the Hippodrome Square in modern Istanbul. This one stood 95 feet tall and weighing 380 tons. Its lower half reputedly also once stood in Istanbul but is now lost. The Istanbul obelisk is 65 feet tall. Rome is the obelisk capital of the world. The most well-known is probably the 25 meters (331-ton) obelisk at St. Peter's Square in Rome. The obelisk had stood since AD 37 on its site on the wall of the Circus of Nero, flanking St. Peter's Basilica. The elder Pliny in his Natural History refers to the obelisk's transportation from Egypt to Rome by order of the Emperor Gaius as an outstanding event. The barge that carried it had a huge mast of fir wood which 4 men's arms could not encircle. 120 bushels of lentils were needed for ballast. Having fulfilled its purpose, the gigantic vessel was no longer wanted. Therefore, filled with stones and cement, it was sunk to form the foundations of the foremost quay of the new harbour at Ostia. Re-erecting the obelisk had daunted even Michelangelo, but Sixtus V was determined to erect it in front of St. Peter's, of which the nave was yet to be built. He had a full-sized wooden mock-up erected within months of his election. Domenico Fontana, the assistant of Giacomo della Porta in the basilica's construction, presented the Pope with a little model crane of wood and a heavy little obelisk of lead, which Sixtus himself was able to raise by turning a little winch with his finger. Fontana was given the project. The obelisk, half buried in the debris of the ages, was first excavated as it stood. Then it took from the 30th of April to the 17th of May 1586 to move it on rollers to the piazza. It required nearly 1,000 men, 140 cart horses, and 47 cranes. The re-erection, scheduled for the 14th of September, the Feast of the Exaltation of the Cross, was watched by a large crowd. It was a famous feat of engineering, which made the reputation of Fontana, who detailed it in a book illustrated with copperplate etchings, Della trasportazione dell'obelisco Vaticano e del fabbrici di nostro signo Papa Sisto V, which itself set a new standard in communicating technical information and influenced subsequent architectural publications by its meticulous precision. Before being re-erected, the obelisk was exorcised. It is said that Fontana had teams of relay horses to make his getaway if the enterprise failed. When Carlo Maderno came to build the basilica's nave, he had to put the slightest kink in its axis to line it precisely with the obelisk. 3 more obelisks were erected in Rome under Sixtus V. The one behind Santa Maria Maggiore, the giant obelisk at the Lateran Basilica, and the one at Piazza del Popolo. An obelisk stands in front of the Church of Trinita dei Monti, at the head of the Spanish Steps. Another obelisk in Rome is sculpted as carried on the back of an elephant. Rome lost one of its obelisks, the Boboli obelisk, which had decorated the Temple of Isis, where it was uncovered in the 16th century. The Medici claimed it for the Villa Medici, but in 1790 they moved it to the Boboli Gardens attached to the Palazzo Pitti in Florence, and left a replica in its stead. Several more Egyptian obelisks have been re-erected elsewhere. The best-known examples outside Rome are the pair of 21-meter 187-ton Cleopatra's Needles in London and New York City, and the 75-foot 227-ton obelisk at the Place de la Concorde in Paris. There are ancient Egyptian obelisks in the following locations: Egyptate Pharaoh Thutmose I, Karnak Temple, Luxor Pharaoh Ramses II, Luxor Temple Pharaoh Hatshepsut, Karnak Temple, Luxor, Pharaoh Senusre I, Al-Masala area of Al-Matariya district in Heliopolis, Cairo Pharaoh Ramses III, Luxor Museum, Pharaoh Ramses II, Gezira Island, Cairo, 20.4 meters Pharaoh Ramses II, Cairo International Airport, 16.97 meters, Pharaoh Seti II, Karnak Temple, Luxor, 7 meters. France won Pharaoh Ramses II, Luxor obelisk, in Place de la Concorde, Paris. Israel won Caesarea obelisk. Italy 13 Rome 8 Ancient Egyptian obelisks Piazza del Duomo, Catania Benevento 2 obelisks Boboli obelisk, Urbino Poland 1 Ramses II, Poznan Archaeological Museum, Poznan, Turkey 1 Pharaoh Thutmosis III, the obelisk of Theodosius in the Hippodrome, Istanbul, along with the Byzantine walled obelisk, and the Serpent Column, United Kingdom 4 Pharaoh Thutmosis III, Cleopatra's Needle on Victoria Embankment, London. Pharaoh Amenhotep II, in the Oriental Museum, University of Durham. Pharaoh Ptolemy IX, Philae obelisk, at Kingston-Lacy, near Wimborne Minster, Dorset. Pharaoh Nectanebo II, British Museum, London, United States. 1 Pharaoh Thutmosis III, Cleopatra's Needle, in Central Park, New York. Assyrian obelisk monuments are also known from the Assyrian civilization, where they were erected as public monuments that commemorated the achievements of the Assyrian king. The British Museum possesses 4 Assyrian obelisks. The White Obelisk of Ashur-nazir-palut was discovered by Hormuzd-Rassam in 1853 at Nineveh. The obelisk was erected by either Ashur-nazir-pal or Ashur-nazir-pal II. The obelisk bears an inscription that refers to the king's seizure of goods, people and herds, which he carried back to the city of Ashur. The reliefs of the obelisk depict in military campaigns, hunting, victory banquets and scenes of tribute-bearing. The Rassam obelisk, named after its discoverer Hormuzd-Rassam, was found on the citadel of Nimrud. It was erected by Ashur-nazir-pal II, though only survives in fragments. The surviving parts of the reliefs depict scenes of tribute-bearing to the king from Syria and the West. The Black Obelisk was discovered by Sir Austen Henry Laird in 1846 on the citadel of Calais. The obelisk was erected by Shalmaneser III, and the reliefs depict scenes of tribute-bearing as well as the depiction of 2 subdued rulers, Jehud the Israelite and Sua the Gilzanian, giving gestures of submission to the king. The reliefs on the obelisk have accompanying epigraphs, but besides these the obelisk also possesses a longer inscription that records one of the latest versions of Shalmaneser III's annals, covering the period from his accessional year to his 33rd regnal year. The broken obelisk that was also discovered by Rassam at Nineveh. Only the top of this monolith has been reconstructed in the British Museum. It is the oldest recorded obelisk from Assyria, dating to the 11th century BC. Aksumite. A number of obelisks were carved in the ancient Aksumite kingdom of today northern Ethiopia, together with King Azana's stele, the last erected one and the only unbroken. The most famous example of Aksumite obelisk is the so-called obelisk of Aksum. It was carved around the 4th century AD and, in the course of time, it collapsed and broke into 3 parts. In these conditions it was found by Italian soldiers in 1935, after the Second Italo-Abyssinian War, looted and taken to Rome in 1937, where it stood in the Piazza di Porta Cappana. Italy agreed in a 1947 UN agreement to return the obelisk, but did not affirm its agreement until 1997, after years of pressure and various controversial settlements. In 2003, the Italian government made the first steps toward its return, and in 2008 it was finally re-erected. The largest known obelisk, the Great Stela Taxum, now fallen, at 33 meters high and 3 by 2 meters at the base, is one of the largest single pieces of stone ever worked in human history and probably fell during erection or soon after, destroying a large part of the massive burial chamber underneath it. The obelisks, properly termed stelae of the native Hawil to royalty, as they do not end in a pyramid, were used to mark graves and underground burial chambers. The largest of the grave markers were for royal burial chambers and were decorated with multi-story false windows and false doors, while nobility would have smaller, less decorated ones. While there are only a few large ones standing, there are hundreds of smaller ones in stelae fields. Ancient Roman. The Romans commissioned obelisks in an ancient Egyptian style. Examples include Arles, France, the Arles obelisk, in Place de la République, a 4th century obelisk of Roman origin. Benevento, Italy, Roman obelisks. Munich, obelisk of Titus Sextius Africanus, Staatliches Museum Ägyptischer Kunst, Kunstareal, 1st century AD, 5.80 meters. Rome. There are 5 ancient Roman obelisks in Rome. See List of obelisks in Rome. Byzantine walled obelisk, Hippodrome of Constantinople, built by Constantine VII Porphyrogenitus and originally covered with gilded bronze plaques. Pre-Columbian. The prehistoric Teo obelisk, found in 1919 at Chavindahuanta in Peru, is a monolith stele with obelisk-like proportions. It was carved in a design of low relief with Chavin symbols, such as bands of teeth and animal heads. Long-housed in the Museo Nacional de Arqueología Antropología y Historia del Perú in Lima, it was relocated to the Museo Nacional de Chavin, which opened in July 2008. The obelisk was named for the archaeologist Julio C. Teo, who discovered it and was considered the father of Peruvian archaeology. He was America's first indigenous archaeologist. Modern obelisks. 17th century Aix-en-Provence, Fontaine des Quatre Dauphins, 1667. 18th century Ripon Market Square obelisk, 1702, at 80 feet in height. It was the first large-scale obelisk to be erected in Britain. St. Luke Old Street, London, spire by Nicholas Hawksmoor circa 1727–33. Mamhead obelisk, 100 feet, built 1742–1745 as an aid to shipping. Stowe School, Buckinghamshire. General Wolfe's obelisk, 1754. Montreal Park obelisk, Riverhead, Sevenoaks, Kent. Lord Geoffrey Amherst's obelisk, 1761. Kagel obelisk in Czarskosello, 1772. Chesma obelisk in Gatchina, 1775. Villa Medici, Rome. In 19th century copy of the Egyptian obelisk moved to the Boboli Gardens in Florence in 1790. Morvallotten incident marker, Wexford, erected after the Morvallotten incident, or the First Rebellion in 1793. Rumyanzev obelisk in St. Petersburg, 1799. Obelisk at Slottsbacken, Stockholm, erected 1800. 19th century Nelson Memorial, Springfield Park, Liverpool, circa 1805. Constitution obelisk, erected in St. Augustine, Florida in 1814 in commemoration of Spanish Constitution of 1812. Brightling Needle, Brightling, East Sussex, circa 1815. Patriots' Grave, Old Burying Ground, Arlington, Massachusetts. Blantyre Monument, Erskine, Renfrewshire, 80 feet. Captain Cook's Monument, Easby Moor, Great Ayton, North Yorkshire, 1827. Groton Monument at Groton, Connecticut, 1830. Bunker Hill Monument, Charlestown, Massachusetts, built between 1827 and 1843. Spencer Monument in Blata El Bajda, Malta, 1831. Thomas Jefferson Obelisk at Monticello was erected in 1833 by his family. Jefferson had willed that only 3 achievements be sketched onto it: author of the Declaration of Independence, author of the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom, and father of the University of Virginia. Obelisk of Lions, in Iasan, Romania, 1834. Villa Torlonia, Rome. 2 obelisks erected 1842. Reggio Emilia obelisk commemorates marriage of Francis V, Duke of Modena to Princess Adelgund of Bavaria, built 1842. Rutherford's monument near Anwath, Scotland, erected in 1842 as a memorial to Samuel Rutherford. The Political Martyrs Monument, Edinburgh, erected 1844 as a memorial to the Scottish martyrs to liberty. Lansdowne Monument near the Sharehill, Whitehorse, Wiltshire, 1845, 38 metres, erected by the 3rd Marquess of Lansdowne to commemorate Sir William Petty. Newcastle, New South Wales, the Obelisk, built 1850. Wellington Monument, Wellington, Somerset, completed 1854. Stoodley Pike, Todmorden, West Yorkshire, built 1856. Obelisk of Fontenoy, 1860. Wellington Monument, 1861. Phoenix Park, Dublin, Ireland, is the tallest in Europe. The obelisk, Port Elizabeth, South Africa, intended for one George Kemp but erected to commemorate the marriage of Albert Edward, Prince of Wales, and Alexandra of Denmark in 1861. Originally on Market Square, now in front of the Bay World Museum complex. Lincoln's Tomb in Springfield, Illinois, 1865. Nicholson's Obelisk, Margla Hills, Pakistan, 1868. Captain Cook Obelisk, Colonel, New South Wales, 1870. The Dauphin County Veterans Memorial Obelisk in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, completed 1876. The Washington Monument in Washington, D.C., USA, measuring 555 feet (5.5 inches) in height, was completed in 1884. The Oroscani Battlefield Monument in Rome, New York, dedicated in 1884 as a memorial to the Revolutionary War battle in 1777. The monument to the restorers in Restaurador Square, Lisbon, Portugal, was erected in 1886 to celebrate the victory in the Portuguese Restoration War. The Bennington Battle Monument in Bennington, Vermont, 1889. Monolith, the Obelisk, in Villala de los Comuneros, 1889. Dalhousie Obelisk, in Raffles Place, Singapore, 1891. The Obelisk, University Park campus of Penn State University, 1896. Confederate War Memorial, 1896. 20th century, the William Dudley Chipley Memorial, in the Plaza Ferdinand VII, Pensacola, Florida, 1901. The Sergeant Floyd Monument, on U.S. Highway 75, Sioux City, Iowa, 1901. Joseph Smith Birthplace Memorial, South Royalton, Vermont, 1905. McKinley Monument, Niagara Square, Buffalo, New York, 1907. The Veterans Monument, Elizabethton, Tennessee, dedicated in 1904 to American Civil War veterans from Carter County, Tennessee. The Chalmette Monument, in Chalmette, Louisiana, commemorating the Battle of New Orleans, 1908. The Coronation Memorial, in Coronation Park, Delhi, commemorating the founding of New Delhi in 1911, followed by other obelisks around the Rashtrapati Bhavan. The Victory Memorial, Fort Recovery, Ohio, completed in 1913. The Rizal Monument in Luneta Park, Manila, Philippines, unveiled on the 30th of December 1913. The National Women's Monument in Bloemfontein, South Africa. It was built in 1913. The Ozark Trail Road system erected a series of 21 obelisks beginning in 1913. The Pax Obelisk, Walmer, Port Elizabeth, as a World War I memorial to local fallen soldiers, 1919. The Henry M. Flagler Obelisk, located on Flagler Monument Island in Miami Beach, Florida, was built in 1920. The War Memorial in London Square, Southport, Lancashire, England, designed by Grayson and Barnish, 1923. It is flanked by two colonnades, each supported by Doric columns, all constructed of Portland stone. Veterans Memorial Plaza at Indiana. World War Memorial Plaza in Indianapolis, Indiana was built in 1923. Jefferson Davis Monument at Jefferson Davis State Historic Site in Fairview, Kentucky, tall, mostly concrete, 1924. Boer War Monument, King's Domain, Melbourne, Australia, 1924. 1925 Hobart Cenotaph, a World War I memorial. A large obelisk with the world's largest apple on top stands at Cornelia, Georgia. It was erected in 1925. Prague Castle Obelisk, 1930. The Foshay Tower in Minneapolis, Minnesota, modeled after the Washington Monument, 1929. Obelisk of Montevideo, Uruguay, 1930. High Point Monument, Montague, New Jersey. A obelisk on top of New Jersey's highest point, 1,803 feet above sea level, 1930. Foro Italico, Rome, erected to honor Benito Mussolini, 1932. Obelisk of Buenos Aires, Argentina, 1936. Trujillo Obelisk, Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, 1937. The War Memorial in Floriana, Malta, 1938. San Jacinto Monument in La Porte, Texas, commemorating the Texan Army's victory at the Battle of San Jacinto and thus gained independence over Mexico, 1939. Trilon and Perisphere, 1939. New York World's Fair, Flushing, New York. Not a true obelisk, but an Art Deco variant, 1939. The obelisk on One Tree Hill in Auckland, New Zealand, 1940. Victory Monument, a large military monument in Bangkok, Thailand, constructed in 1941 to commemorate the Thai victory in the Franco-Thai War, a brief conflict waged against the French colonial authorities in Indochina, which resulted in Thailand annexing some territories in western Cambodia and northern and southern Laos. These were among the territories which the Kingdom of Siam had been forced to cede to France in 1893 and 1904, and patriotic Thais considered them rightfully to belong to Thailand. Manzana Obelisk, Independence, California, monument to honor Japanese intern during World War II, 1943. Plaza Francia Obelisk in Caracas, Venezuela, 1944. The Banska Bystrica Obelisk, commemorating the soldiers of the Red Army and those of the Romanian Army who fell while liberating the town of Banska Bystrica, Slovakia in 1945. Lucas Gusher Obelisk, recognizing the 50th anniversary of the birth of the liquid fuel age as the Lucas Gusher came in its spindle top on January 10, 1901 in Beaumont, TX, 1951. Memorial in Safed, Israel to soldiers who died in the Israel War of Independence. Obelisk of São Paulo, Brazil, 1954. Abolition Park in Ponce, Puerto Rico, 1956. Obelisk of La Paz, Bolivia. Demidov Column in Bernarul, Siberia, Russia. Victory Obelisk in Moscow. Obelisk of the War Memorial of Brest Fortress in Brest, Belarus, 100 meters, 1971. A small obelisk stands at Trinity Site, the location of the first atomic bomb explosion. Rugby, North Dakota, the geographical center of North America. Pirulito da Praca set in Belo Horizonte, Brazil. 21 obelisks mark Boise, Idaho's portion of the Oregon Trail. The Islamic Summit Minor is an obelisk-shaped structure built near the Charing Cross Mall Road in Lahore, Pakistan. It was built to commemorate the Organization of Islamic Conference held in Lahore in 1974. Its foundation stone was laid on the 22nd of February 1974 on the first anniversary of the conference. It is 155 feet high. In Las Vegas, Nevada, U. An obelisk stands in front of the Luxor Hotel, a pyramid-shaped hotel along the Strip. An obelisk stands in front of radio talk show host Clint Ferro's boyhood home, Endicott, New York, 1975. Monument Nasional, symbolizing the fight for the independence of Indonesia, at Merdeka Square, Jakarta, 1975. A large obelisk stands in North Korea called the Juche Tower, 1982. Memorial to Egypt's fallen soldiers in the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, at Adhalom, Israel. Avis Obelisk, Avis Farms Office Park, Pittsfield Township, Michigan, 1998. Marking the position of the future Baha'i House of Worship in Haifa. 21st Century Kapus National Shrine in Tarlac Province, Philippines. A 70-meter obelisk, erected in 2003. Colonna Eterna, in San Juan, Malta. Egyptian obelisk by Paul Velocratian, erected in 2003. Colonna Mediterranea in Lucca, Malta, a 10-foot-high abstract art by Paul Velocratian, a landmark since its inauguration in 2006. Fondant white obelisk in the main square of Vigan, Ilocos Sur, Philippines. Obelisko Novecento, Rome, 2004. Sculpture by Arnaldo Permaduro. Cyclisk is a 65-foot-high obelisk made of 350 bicycles erected in Santa Rosa, California. Sarkinitli, a 9-meter-high obelisk made of stainless steel, was unveiled the 23rd of November in Tornio, Finland.